Born in Dodge, Nebraska, 1896, Joe Stecher had dubbed around in various sports besides wrestling. His brother, a Navy champion, persuaded young Joe to take up the sport seriously. And at the age of 19, the lad was a formidable foeman for any grappler in America. Stetcher's fame rested upon the scissors hold, a grip which consists in locking the legs around an opponent's body until crackling sounds announce broken bones and the complete subjugation of the adversary. It was then, even as now, a matter of common talk that Charlie Cutler would never have ventured out into Stecher's territory for a title bout if he hadn't understood from close friends that Stecher was a person hardly rated as a first-class matman, and that Stecher and his manager brother Tony would talk business. Cutler entered the lion's den and was promptly eaten up. It was in July 1915 when Stecher won over Cutler in 2 straight falls in 29 minutes. The match took place on July 5th, 1915 in Omaha, with Stecher destroying Cutler in 2 straight falls. Afterwards, he was announced as the new world champion. Every major promoter of the time was sitting at ringside, and next to them was none other than Frank Gotch himself. This seems to have been the first step to push Joe Stecher as the next major wrestling superstar. The idea was to make Stecher champion and then have him wrestle and beat Gotch in Chicago. Prior to Stecher's victory, reporters always referred to Gotch as the world champion. After Stecher's match with Cutler, they referred to Stecher as the holder of the American title, and continued to call Gotch the world champion. Friends who had wagered thousands and mortgaged their homes to place bets upon Cutler because of the latter's assurance lost their all. Stecher was the wrestling lion of the hour, and eager mat manipulators tried to entice the retired Gotch to tangle with the new sensation. Gotch didn't refuse. He merely demanded an impossible guarantee, and there the matter rested. Once again, Griffin runs circles around the truth. Less than a week after Stecher won the title, Gotch was interviewed and was said to be considering coming out of retirement to wrestle Stecher. Tentative arrangements pointed to a date in August, but injuries and illness prevented the match from taking place. By the following year, Gotch was suffering from serious stomach problems, and his weight had dropped from 230 pounds to 185. He was in no condition to wrestle. He returned home to recuperate, and a few weeks later returned to the Cells Floto circus. When talks with Gotch regarding a match with Stecher were renewed, he was reported to have signed a contract on June 14th, 1916. On July 18th, however, Gotch fractured his leg while wrestling with the circus and was unable to fulfill the obligation. The following month, newspapers began to ask the question, is Stecher the American heavyweight champion or the world champion? Scribes began to focus on Stecher and how he was the best of the bunch in regard to having the right to call himself champion. By the following year, the American title was seldom mentioned, and Stecher was finally considered by most people to be the world champ. The wrestling game didn't really begin to fall into disrepute, however, until Stecher and Earl Caddick, the man of 1,000 holds, tangled in Omaha on April 9th, 1917. Again, the unsuspecting friends and supporters of a wrestling king were taken into camp by the shoppers. Ranchmen and farmers who had seen Stecher apply his famed scissors hold to luckless opponents were convinced that not a living man had a chance to beat their Nebraska pride and joy. Imagine their consternation when Stecher lost. The Stecher-Caddick bout has always remained one of the unexplained matdom mysteries. Joe won the first fall shortly after the half-hour mark, and Caddick the second after nearly an hour and 40 minutes of tugging. Then it was that Stecher threw down the many friends who had been betting on him by refusing to come out of his dressing room for the third deciding fall. Caddick was named victor by default. We're not sure where Griffin gets his information, but it's well documented that Stecher won the first fall in 1 hour and 22 minutes, and not shortly after the half-hour mark. Stories of why Stecher didn't return for the third fall varied from day to day. At first, Stecher said his managers didn't tell him to return to the ring until it was too late. His managers later made the excuse that he was out of condition and tired from the long trip to Omaha. That morphed into Stecher being sick, and by April 17th, Stecher was simply saying he had been beaten fairly. Newspapers on the day after the match reported Stecher saying he had not refused to come out of his dressing room, and he had not forfeited the match, but that he was not warned that the time for his reappearance in the ring had expired. However, reporters said Joe Hetmanik, Stecher's manager, personally carried word to the referee that the Dodge boy could not continue because of a wrenched neck. Newspapers did report that many Nebraskans lost bets ranging from $30,000 to $60,000, and some even lost their farms.